Hello, everybody. My name is Ray. Welcome to the Evangelical Dark Web. Today, we're going to be talking about the gender gap and kind of asking ourselves, are American women more demonic than ever? So, we're going to be talking about that, and we're going to be using polls as a fun question or a fun means to answer this question, and specifically political polls regarding the performance of Joe Biden in the Biden Regency. We're going to be talking about the polls that have come out recently and this one NBC poll that captured a lot of people's attention. And for the right reasons, it is a very interesting breakdown as we see a massive shift from 2018 to 2022. Both of these are midterm election years. So there's a lot of polling in midterm election years, obviously. So, with that said, it's interesting how the polls are breaking down. And I gotta ask, are American women more demonic than ever? So let's dive right into that in here.
Concept of a gender gap, not necessarily new to American politics in ways we've been talking about it in decades, but I think it's striking here, some of these numbers. If you look at the NBC polling coming out in the first few months of this year, in advance of the midterm elections this year, and just comparing them to the last midterm election, the 2018 midterm elections. So let's show you what we mean here. So this is 2018, and what you're seeing here, this is the post-election study that was done. These are the most comprehensive numbers I think you're going to get on the breakdown for the 2018 midterm vote. This is from Pew. And what they found was that men went Democratic by a 2-point margin in the 2018 midterms. Women went Democratic by an 18-point margin. So again, a gender gap.
So, again, 2018 was a good year for Democrats on the congressional ballot. Now, it was not as good as it should have been for the Democrats based on the polling. So, just a rule of thumb, political polls are a Rorschach test. They're not exactly accurate, but they are. This is where they are good. They are a good mood indicator. They are a good momentum indicator. But, I don't think polling in America is all that accurate. They're definitely wrong a lot. So, with that said, this is a good mood indication of where America was in 2018. And that's because the Republicans did not exactly hold up their promises in Congress, so a lot of them did not get reelected. So, what's interesting to note is that everyone in 2018 was talking about suburban women. And you see that women went Democrat at a plus 18% margin. So keep that in mind. 2018, everything was all about suburban women. Suburban women this, suburban women that. Can Trump win back suburban women?
And again, this was a year, this is about as good as it gets for the Democrats, the midterm wave of 2018 when they took back the House. Now, take a look at the average of our NBC polling on the generic congressional ballot question. Do you want the Democrats? Do you want the Republicans in 2022? Now, the atmosphere overall, obviously, much more Republican friendly so far. But look at the shifts here. It's a pronounced shift among men from Democrats by 2 in 2018 to, in our polling so far this year, Republicans by an 18-point margin, a shift in the Republican direction among men of 20 points here. And among women, you see it is a shift toward Republicans, but barely. It's from an 18-point margin for the Democrats in 18, now a 15-point margin in our polls. And so what you see here is the gap, men favoring.
That is a 33-point gap. According to this poll, this is an NBC poll, so MSNBC is the ones are the ones who are breaking down their own poll, and they're comparing it to a Pew Research voter study from 2018. So they're comparing the current polling to what I believe they think were basically the election poll, or actually those are election results, I think, or a study of the election results from 2018.
Republicans in our polling by 18 points. Women favoring Democrats by 15 points. That amounts to a gender gap in our polling so far this year of 33 points. So that's, we say gender gap is not new. 33 points, though, we're starting
gender
to get the
canyon.
levels.
Yeah, we're going to start calling it a canyon now.
I think. Get a different word than gap.
Exactly.
Something more.
I'm going to agree with that. Gap undersells what's going on here. And I'm going to show you how this poll is corroborated by other polls. We're going to look at two other polls from two different sources, taken at two different times. This trend holds up extremely well. Now, this is where things really get interesting.
Dramatic. And you mentioned, too, the education divide. Right. So we've established more movement among men than women. Then there's also this. Again, post-election 2018, here's how the groups broke men and women by education level. Here's where they are in our polling right now. And again, two things jump out. Among men is where you see the double-digit movement toward the Republicans. More pronounced men with a college degree. That's a group that swung hard toward the Democrats in the 18 midterms, dramatically in our polling now moving towards Republicans. That's a huge shift right there. Something else that jumps out is look at this. Remember, 18, an incredibly friendly environment for Democrats. Women with degrees, heavily Democratic then. In a more Republican-friendly environment overall, women with degrees have actually gotten more Democratic. So this group is really becoming, women with a college degree, really becoming core to the Democratic Party and its chances. You talk about a swing group, women without degrees, Democrats by 3, Democrats by 1, as close to a 50-50 group as you're going to see here. And one other note I just make here is when you look at this double-digit shift, men without degrees, one thing, possibility it raises is this issue we've been talking about when it comes to the Hispanic vote. And is the Hispanic vote...
I'm going to pause right here because he's going to try and break down the Hispanic numbers based on what we have them. Actually, let me back it up a little bit just so we can get this nice, pretty, uninterrupted graphic on the screen. So you see a huge disparity between men and women, and that's carries over broken down by education. Now, more educated men are leaning more Republican. This actually lines up with what I said after the 2020 election. And what I said after the 2020 election is we're seeing a political realignment. And this political realignment was between masculinity and effeminacy, and femininity and androgyny. So masculinity and femininity, it's basically those who affirm God's ordination of gender and gender roles versus those who reject them. And that applies to men and women. So that's what I said that the breakdown was going to be based off of. And this holds up today. I can't remember what video I said that, but that was the political realignment that I was forecasting and seeing because Hispanics were breaking towards Trump, or Republicans. Hispanics are going Republican hardcore. The Democrats, through their Black Lives Mattering, are hemorrhaging the Hispanic vote. However, they are capturing women at alarming rates. Now, there used to be a huge disparity between married women and single women. Married versus single. Whereas single women would be like the number one Democrat demographic. And married women would actually be a pretty reliable Republican vote. But what is possibly one of the explanations for this poll, or this polling trend, is that there are more single women. So because there are more single women, this hardcore Democrat demographic is increased. So the size of the pie is bigger. Regardless of how that pie breaks down, it's a bigger pie, so therefore it skews these numbers, creating a huge gender canyon. The other explanation I think is actually fairly obvious, and that is college. And how college indoctrination has created more liberal women than ever before. Indoctrination works. Grooming works. And what we're seeing in this polling data is that women are more liberal than men than ever before. Now, again, there was a gap before. There was a gap with Hillary Clinton in 2016 between men and women. And I think there always has been. Like, Democrats have always captured more women. And I think Republicans have always captured more men. However, the shift is more dramatic now because, this is a lot of women have been inundated with feminism. A lot of women are not getting married, and not having children, which therefore these two things, which would naturally make you more conservative going in than you were prior to, you were more conservative having a kid after having a kid than you would have been before having a kid, unless you want to groom your child to be a transvestite. It's the ultimate liberal dilemma that I had a meme about in that one video I did about the NPCs, and how they have the dilemma is, I'm pregnant, do I abort my child or do I groom it to be a sexual deviant? That's the liberal dilemma. So with that said, women not really liking to get married these days as much. They want to be hoes in their 20s and then be used up by their 30s and then be single in their 40s, which will not lead to happiness. It just won't. And men, I don't think, are looking to settle down. There's a lot of simp culture out there, but that's another, both of that is another topic for another day. But what we are seeing is that men are the more rational sex here, which is unsurprising. To quote Jack Nicholson, I picture a man and then take away reasoning and accountability. That's what's going on here. And again, this is based off congressional preference. So this is a generic congressional ballot. We're going to also dive into Joe Biden's approval in a second here. But women are more aligned with Democratic ideology than Republican ideology, even though there isn't really a Republican ideology. So that's scary stuff. And again, he's going to talk about how Hispanics break down or are shifting more towards Republican, but the question is by how much. We're not going to watch that section of this video, but what we are going to do is we're going to hop over to Real Clear Politics and talk about the approval rating of Joe Biden. And as you can see, it's had some better days. It's also had some worse days. Like, he started off with heavy media blitzkrieg, having high approval, and then 2022 hit, and he is just way under. Actually, he got underwater real fast. So he got underwater after basically Afghanistan's what killed his approval. So we're gonna look at two polls. The first poll I want to look at is a Marist poll. This happened This happened late March. So this was a late March poll, but it's very interesting because it's broken down quite well. So I wanted to use this to start out with. So we look at, let me switch it up a little bit. Nope, that's my meme. No, let's keep it like this. So we're going to look at the poll, and Democrat men, 35% approval, 34%, or 35 strongly approved, 34% just approved. So that is near 70% here. So 69%, which I guess is nice if you're a Democrat, support or approve of Joe Biden's performance. Democrat women, it is much higher than that. We are talking 77% approve. Democrat women. So we have a near 10-point gap between Democrat men and Democrat women. Those are just Democrats, which is actually pretty fascinating. Now, women, again, it's pretty nominal among the Republican Party, but there is a +3 gap of approval. So 5% of women, Republican women, approve of Joe Biden's approval versus 2% of Republican men. Your David French and your Eric Erickson, I guess. Now, independent men. The approval rating is 37%. Independent women, the approval rating is 34%, which is actually less, which is pretty interesting. Independents are actually more disapproving. Independent women are more disapproving than independent men. That is fascinating. So then we get just gender. Where is it broken down by gender? So gender, we see a breakdown of 37% of men approve versus women, it's 41%. And this is during a low point for Joe Biden. So we got a 41% for women approving of Joe Biden, probably during his lowest polling. And then, and if we look at it by race, whites, it was 37% approve versus, a lot of other people disapproving, 58%, which is a super majority. And then for non-whites, it's 50-50, or almost 50-50. It's 50% approve, but no more. And then 47% disapprove. So it's only a +3 margin. So that's not good if you're Democrats. That's pretty underwater if you're Democrats, to be hemorrhaging or to have that low of a view of job performance among non-whites. So going back to let's race and education. So it's like white non-college graduates, which is the most disapproving demographic of Joe Biden, where it's like 49%, which is almost majority, strongly disapprove. That's not to mention the other 16% who disapprove, carrying that up to 65% disapproval. And the 29% approval among non-white, white non-college graduates, at 29% approval. And then the white college graduates, it is a 47% approval. And then the disapproval is almost a majority, actually. So disapproval for white college graduates is actually really close. 17 plus 31 be 48. Pretty close. And then women non-college graduates is 33% approve, which is very low compared to what we've seen in the other women demographics thus far. And then white women college graduate, 51% approve. And this is during Joe Biden's lowest numbers, 51% approve. And here's another interesting thing. This gets us off the men and women stuff, but the generational breakdown is interesting as well. It's not the millennials that like Joe Biden's performance with a 34% approval rating. It's not. This isn't driven by millennials. This is driven by old people. This is strictly driven by old people, baby boomers, who give Joe Biden a 47% approval. 47%. And then men and women overall in this poll, it is 41% for women approve, and then 37% for men. So we still have a gap. So that is the Marist poll, which had Biden at his lowest, and then we have a YouGov poll that is very broken down. So let's check this out some more, and it's interesting because they got they have it broken down by vaccination, and this poll did a lot, and specifically, you look at the people who are vaccinated and their views on Ukraine. NPCs. The fully vaccinated. They're NPCs. So, this is a recent poll. This is like the most recent that has this type of breakdown. So, strongly approve. Man, I wish it was just approve and not strongly approve. Let's make it a 3-point poll rather than a 5-point question thing. So here we also see a gender gap, and we see 47% of women approve, and we see that only 43% of women approve, and only 37% of men approve. And the disparity, more women are not sure about it, are not sure about how they feel about Joe Biden's approval. So that increases the disparity of disapproving strongly, whereas 55% of men disapprove, and yet only 46% of women disapprove. And then white women college graduate, and that number is 33 plus 19. Wow, I'm blanking on this. 52%. 52% of women white women approve of Joe Biden's job performance. 52% of white women with college degrees, that is, approve. And then without college degrees, again, very conservative demographic, almost as conservative as the men. There is a gender gap, but it is a more normative gender gap with what we've seen in the past. But with a college degree, that gender gap is massive. Massive. You look at strongly disapproved, it is a 16-point swing between a degree and a not a degree for white women. And then the most heavily disapproving demographics of Joe Biden's performance are white men who are non-vaccinated. Actually, the most not fully vaccinated have 53% disapproval. Or sorry, 57% disapproval. And then among no degree white men, it is 56%. So I'm sure there's some heavy overlap, but and then the other thing to note is that the rich, or wait, who's actually driving the approval? It's really unclear because his approval is all over the place. Regardless of, it actually appears to be the rich. The rich seem to be driving the approval by looks, and then I guess some of the poor. So those are just some of the breakdowns of the polls, and here's what I want to close off. I want to close off talking about the church, because this is a Christian channel, so you should subscribe to the Evangelical Dark Web for uncompromising Christian commentary. So let's actually drive this back to the church. Just like more women are in colleges, I kind of wonder what the breakdown is on church attendance gender-wise, and I kind of think that more women attend church than men. I could be wrong about that. But here's one thing that is true, is that churches, especially your suburban megachurch wannabes, are designed for women. They are specifically catering towards women. Look at Levi Lusko's Fresh Life Church. It is specifically designed for women. Like, he is incredibly targeting women in his messaging. It is heavily made for women. And that's why, you got the guys like eye rolling, like this isn't meaningful at all. Like, this sounds good, but it doesn't mean anything, or it's just so basic, it's beneath me. But, my wife likes it, so let's keep coming back next week. You kind of have that mentality. It's like these churches are so designed towards women, and yet this is the result. And in 4 years, this is the breakdown, the growing canyon, as MSNBC called it, between men and women as it relates to politics. And guess what? You cannot compartmentalize politics from faith. You can't compartmentalize that, which is what the liberals say we must do, or else we hold we're putting politics as an idol, because we don't compartmentalize politics and faith, because you can't as a Christian. So that's really where I wanted to close off. As you can see, heavy on the I kind of wonder, are American women more demonic than ever? Now, this polling isn't enough to conclude that the answer is yes, but it's pretty close. So that's all. That's where I'll leave it off for today. If you like this kind of content, do also subscribe to the channel. Also check out evangelicaldarkweb.org and subscribe to that RSS feed. That's the least you can do, as well as as subscribing to this channel on YouTube, and you can get the daily updates in your inbox every single day. That includes videos as well, because YouTube notifications aren't all that reliable. And you can also become a paid subscriber at evangelicaldarkweb.org/join. It is a Patreon-like system, but because we don't use Patreon because they censor, so we built our own. So let me know what you think about what I think. I love this comment section. And have a blessed day. I will catch you on the next one.